Good morning, good evening. It's Magdi
Hello,
here.
Magdi. Magdi, where are you from?
I'm originally from Australia. Well, not originally from Australia, originally from Egypt, and I'm Australian citizen, and at the moment live in the Philippines.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah, thank you.
And Nadine, I know you're interested in the Philippines as well, along with Charisse Ramirez. So maybe we can exchange emails so that the three of you can be connected.
Yeah,
Yes, I love that.
what sort of interest for the Philippines?
Nadine, do you
Well,
want to share your interest in the Philippines?
sure. I'm half Filipino, so my mom is from the Philippines. I know I don't look like it, but I am.
Ah, yeah,
And Charis is 100% Filipino.
you look bit Asian, so I can see that you are Filipina. And where which part of the Philippines?
From Manila.
Ah, yeah. I've been around in the Philippines, but now I'm settled in Davao.
Uh-huh.
That's not far from the ex-president Duterte and Sarah. Yeah, well, they're very close to where I live. Yeah, well, Davao City is not. Well, it is big, but it's reachable. Yeah,
That's great.
yeah,
I hope to go to the Philippines next year.
yeah. Well, I'm hoping to go to Australia next year. I've been 3.5 years now living here. I'm married and yeah, well, it's not like married with children like the show on TV. I'm married with no children. Anyway,
Well,
well,
good. Well, I'm glad we were able to make that connection today. That's great.
yep, yep, absolutely. Okay, well, I'm gonna mute myself now so you can go
Okay,
on with the thing.
wonderful. Well, I think we'll go ahead and get started. The reason that we wanted to do this is that it used to be that these advisory committee meetings were held in person. It was actually 10 years ago this summer that I went to an advisory committee meeting for the PKD Foundation with a group of patients and families. And after it was over, we walked into the hall and we all just had a chance to chat. And last year I was at a NORD meeting and another group was talking about their trip to the FDA and they were talking about how great it was to just sit and chat for a few moments after it was over. So I thought, okay, when we have our moment, when we finally have our advisory committee meeting, I wanted a chance for us to all just be together and have a chance to ask any questions and to celebrate. I think for me, one of the most important things that I heard today is just how important the patient voice is. And I hope you heard that too. I mean, we were just writing down, we were sitting at our desk and we were on a chat string or text string with the staff, just like that quote was important, that quote was important. They just kept saying that how much of a difference the patient voice made and how much telling your experiences, what a difference that made. They also talked about the importance of registries, which I think is also very important to be thinking about as well. So I think one important reminder we want to make, I think most people are aware of this, we've been putting this all over social media in the last hour, is that this is not the final decision. So this it's a little bit different than the EMA. The EMA, they have a committee called the CHIMP, and that CHIMP makes a recommendation, and that's what the European Commission does. It's not the same in the United States. So in the United States, the FDA Advisory Committee is strictly that role of advisor. They had a lot of discussion. I thought there's no way this meeting is going to last the whole day, but it did. I mean, they really dove into the data and they discussed it and they thought about it and they fretted over it. And I think you heard Dr. Kehoe, who's an endocrinologist at the FDA, say at the end, you gave to the advisory committee when she thanked them, you gave us a lot of really good things to think about. So we did do a little digging, and we'll see if this plays out or not, but we saw some data that said that the FDA sides with the advisory committee about 80% of the time. So I had a feeling someone might ask that. So Hope and I did a little digging and found that number online. So we'll see if that happens. So August 16th is what's called the PDUFA date, and that is the date that they are required, the FDA is required to make a decision by. So that's the date that we'll sit and wait for. So I see that Dr. Kaplan is on. I don't know if he can hear us, but I thought I would turn the floor over to him if there is anything he would like to say or share at this time.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Thanks. I listened to the entire proceedings. First, congratulations to all the patients and the IFOPA and everybody who commented in the public session. I thought that was marvelous, and I sat in rapt attention for the entire day. But mainly the public session where you told your own stories. And Hope, congratulations to you for reading the testimonies of those who weren't available to come today. I thought they were marvelous. Marvelous in the sense that they were deeply emotional. As far as the panel was concerned, and the FDA was concerned, I thought the FDA did their homework, and they really analyzed the data themselves, which I thought was admirable. And I thought the panel members and the discussion, especially not just the votes, but how they discussed their votes, was enlightening. And I thought it was a well-balanced discussion today in general.
That's great.
One thing I wanted to just add is that I echo everything that Michelle and Dr. Kaplan said about the importance of the voice of the community in this discussion. But one of the feedback that someone gave with their vote was that they felt it was important to give the individuals with FOP the choice to choose whether this medication was right for them. And obviously that choice happens with, your primary medical team or the FOP experts that you consult with, but just for the FDA to recognize that choice is really something that belongs to all of you was really reassuring to hear. So I just wanted to add that little piece of my observation in there.
Yeah, no, I thought that was great. And I thought the registry was important, and I hope that if this medicine is approved, that it's used responsibly. When I say responsibly, I mean by people who know FOP and know the patients, not just writing the prescription. I think that wasn't the sponsor's intent. That it was just to be handled individually. And I also reflected back, Hope, on comments that were made to me many years ago by a patient, and she said, if you examine me, Dr. Kaplan, I don't have much movement. My KGIS is 28 or 30 out of 30. She says, and I only have like 5 degrees of movement in my wrist and my fingers and my maybe 5 or 10 degrees of movement in my ankle, one ankle, and maybe 5 degrees of movement on my knee, but it's not much. And basically I'm wheelchair bound and I need help with everything. But the movement I have is 100% of my residual movement, and that's important to me. And, who are we to say? Who are we to say as doctors that patients shouldn't have this choice? And so, I think if the medication showed that there was absolutely no benefit, then it's a different story. But there might be, and who are we to say?
And I think the community really a lot of you I know wrote letters to submit to the docket. So a lot of you have put in that work to maintain that you hopefully can have that choice. So it's deserved. If it is granted and is approved, it's definitely well deserved for all that everyone has done.
And congratulations to those. And I'll say this to everybody, and it's in the papers as well. To those who are really pioneers who participate in this study, who participate in any study, in any clinical trial, because they're experiments and they're imperfect experiments, and it's unlike an animal model where you create the same condition every time with some chemical or physical injury that incites bone formation. It's pretty much standard everywhere, and I think clinical trials are not like that, and I think Ipsen has learned from this trial, the way Clementi has set it up, and the current trials on the signal transduction inhibitors are in with placebo control groups, and I think it's important also for the FOP community to realize, and I think you heard this today, that placebo groups are not only important for efficacy. Everybody says, "Oh, I don't want to be in the placebo group. I want the treatment." Well, these are not treatments; they're human experiments, and we need to acknowledge that. And patients and need to understand that. But we also need placebo groups for safety, and I think we saw that today, where the flare-ups, for example, are maybe and probably are underreported in the natural history group, because you're in a natural history study, you're not going to get a medication, so you're not going to report a flare-up, or you might have a different threshold for reporting a flare-up because you don't want to go into the study and you don't want to get and so and we saw this with the Regeneron study too. Placebo groups really need to be done for safety as well as efficacy. So I think that's an important point. And sponsors can sort of stab themselves in the foot by not having a placebo group. So
I just wanted to give a shout out to Hope and her team for coaching all of us who testified today. You did such a great job coaching us and helping us practice and really craft our story. So it made the most impact. So thank you for all of that hard work.
It was definitely a great joy and privilege for me to be able to work with all of you, because you all had such incredible stories to tell. I think the hardest part was narrowing it down to 3 minutes, because 3 minutes is not a lot of time. But thank you, Megan. It was definitely a highlight, and it was hard because a lot of those, I know people who gave testimony today shared how emotional it made them and how hard it was to get through their testimony without, sharing all of those emotions. And so again, just thank you for bringing those stories to the spotlight and sharing it with the advisory committee. And now they'll be available for people to view afterwards as well. So
yeah. You might take those testimonies also and think of using them. They could make a very important documentary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I did. My biggest goal was to get through that without breaking down and crying.
I'll tell you, Megan, I learned a lot from the testimonies today. From just listening, because I knew everybody that spoke, and but I didn't know everything about them. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was really well done.
Agreed.
So, congratulations to you, Joe, to everybody who did that.
Does anybody else want to share about whether you testified verbally? We've got Joe on here who gave his testimony. In addition to Megan, Miriam is on here, who gave her testimony as well, about what that experience was like for you.
Michelle or Jonathan, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I mean, it was cool to talk to them like this as a human being almost. You know, sometimes, like, we watched the whole thing today, was all about statistics and graphs, and there was no human element to it, so it's nice to have a human element to it, like how it really affects us. Instead of, oh, you have a flare and you lose movement, when you see it in person and stories, it hits a lot differently than just numbers on a piece of paper.
Miriam, anything you want to add? I think someone else had a comment. Is that you, Jessica?
Yes, I applaud everything that's been done from different sides of the pie. There's so many different elements to it all. And I think the importance of I'm going to start crying. I think about children of my granddaughter's age, she's 7. And I think about how the disease progresses at that age and the difference of, because I've lived it, my age, I'm very blessed to be the age that I am. And the people that are my age, over 55. You think how life was those for us over the 1960s, 1970s, when for those of us at FOP, our parents had nowhere to turn. There was nothing. It was a needle in a haystack trying to get any information. And understand how important it was to have a list of names. That was starting many years ago. And it's wonderful how things have progressed and grown in all the years that there are. I applaud Dr. Kaplan, Dr. Zadroff all the time because of what they've done and what their input to make this work. And the village that is around them. It just feels nice. Yeah. I think it's nice to see that the progression that won't happen for kids that are my granddaughter's age because of what's going on. It's no guarantee. But it's a treatment to live as independent as you can with what you've got. That's all. Yeah. It's a blessing. That's all.
You're absolutely right. And I think we would be remiss if we didn't say and just think about Jeannie Pieper, our founder today as well.
Yes.
It's kind of funny that it's the 35th anniversary month. We've been posting on social media every single day, and it's actually going to bleed over into mid-July.
Right.
All the posts about all of the things that have happened since the IFOPA was founded in 1988. Yeah. And it was, Jeannie was given this list. Here's, this is before HIPAA. She was given a list of, here's the people that have FOP that we know of at the NIH. Right. And she said, I'm going to go home, and I'm going to type letters to them and see what happens. And 10 of them wrote her back. And so those 11 people decided to form this organization so they could connect with one another. And I think we saw what the power of that connection, what that's accomplished today. And so, it is definitely an important part of the story. So a big gratitude to Jeannie Pieper and to Nancy Sando, and to Monica Anderson, who are the 3 surviving members of the IFOPA's founding group.
And I was in early on, but I had a full-time job and did what I could, but I didn't have the time that they did. It's a matter of getting all the information together that we have and the information that we share. And thank goodness for the internet and social media. Yes. How much further we've come in such a short period of time.
Yeah. I also want to say that I think what you saw today is just the beginning. Where the pioneers, where there's going to be a parade of, in the years to come, there's going to be a parade of clinical trials and sponsors and potential drugs, whether it's the FOP trial or the Insight or the Ipsen or others yet to come that we can't even imagine. The community is solid. And we have a target, a range of targets rather, that and hopefully there will be many drugs. And I think, Michelle, you said this well, that it will probably be a cocktail. It's a different disease for different people at different times in their lives. And even identical twins have different journeys with FOP. So I think this is just the beginning of what will be a hopeful parade of testimonies in front of the drug, in front of the FDA.
Thoughts, reflections from others? I see Laura Rossano and Charisse both joined us. That's great. So Lynn from the FOP lab is also here with us. Karen joined us.
Hello, I work with Eileen Shore and Fred Kaplan. I was constantly following this, and I'm so happy. I literally cried when I saw this. I've seen a lot of patients coming to the lab. To hear that as a patient, it was emotional, and I was literally praying that, yes, this should be that. And yeah, very happy. And I always tell the lab people, look, this is what determination is. And yeah, this is the first step, as Fred said, and soon there will be cocktails. Yes. And I'm so happy. No words. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. I also have an email here from Dr. Maurizio Pacifici, who's at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. And he says, long and tough day, but the votes are clear. Let's pray the FDA accepts the recommendation. My fingers will remain crossed. Thank you for your heartfelt words during the proceedings. It's always hard to hear the patients and the families, but I hope today will bring them a little hope and faith in the future. And Dr. Pacifici is one of the researchers that helped identify retinoids as a drug class that would could treat FOP. So he is following this very, very closely. And so he wanted to share that with you all as well. Anyone else care to share? Here's another one of our speakers joining us, Margot Black from Vanderbilt, a study coordinator down there. So we're glad to have you with us. Thanks for speaking today, Margot.
Oh, thank you. It was a privilege.
Some of you may have met Margot, even if you haven't been to Vanderbilt. She worked with us at the FOP Biobank, I think both in 2018 in Baltimore and 2019 in
Yes.
Orlando. So
Yes.
that's another important way that you can contribute to research is through the FOP Biobank that takes blood, urine, saliva, and as well as those, not just baby teeth. I mean, that's what's most popular is the baby teeth. But if you're having a tooth extraction, those teeth that are extracted still have value as well. So that's great. And Catherine DeHeer, also from Vanderbilt, is here to welcome. So I think one of the other things that I'll just share, there was a couple of times today where I heard them referring to FOP registry data. And we know that there was a lot of FOP registry data that was also pulled. We were actually fulfilling requests for data from Ipsen last week. So the registry, if you're not a part of it, or if you're a part of it, I just want to say thank you. That involves an enrollment survey, takes probably realistically about an hour. It can be completed over several periods of time. You talk about your diagnosis, a little bit about kind of a baseline about your demographics and who you are, where you live, and then a little bit about where your disease is today. And then every 6 months, the IFOPA will send an email. And that email is an opportunity for you to help us understand the natural history of this disease by filling out a follow-up survey. And whether something has happened to you or whether nothing has happened to you, it's important to fill out that survey so we know nothing's happening with your FOP or there's a lot happening with your FOP. So if you get those emails, The follow-up surveys only take probably 15 minutes if nothing's going on, maybe 30 minutes if a lot's going on to fill out. For your enrollment survey and for your follow-up surveys, you get a $25 gift card that we'll send you as a thank you for participating in research. I mentioned earlier that Ipsen was using some of that data. They always get anybody, whether it's an academic researcher or a pharmaceutical company, they get aggregated data. So nothing private is shared about you specifically, but it's a really important way. You don't even have to take a drug to be a part of this. There's no risk to the registry. It's just a really easy, important way for you to help us learn more about the natural history of the disease. You can fill it out. If you have children, you fill it out on behalf of your children, but it's super, super important. So I hope if you're not a part of that you'll think about it, or if you're in it, that you will tell other people. I think that's sometimes one of the things we find is that when people with FOP tell other people with FOP something, it goes a lot further than when the IFOPA does. So if you'll make testimonials about how important, you saw today that the registry data is important. So if anybody wants to make a post, or if you're messaging with someone and tell them, hey, if you're not on the registry, we hope you will be, that would be great, because we're going to need lots more of this data as more of these drugs come. And I think Dr. Kaplan was absolutely right. We've been posting about it. We're about to release a map of all of the clinical trials that are out there. But there are 3 kinase inhibitor trials right now. The Stop FOP trial, which is happening in Europe, that trial is full. But there are 2 other kinase inhibitor trials. Insight has the Progress clinical trial that is taking people with FOP starting at age 12. That's the Insight Progress trial. And there is also the Ipsen Falcon trial that at this time is taking 15 and up. In about a year, they hope to be able to go down to age 5, but that's pending safety data. And then we also know that the Regeneron Optima trial is recruiting. It's a phase 3 trial recruiting people that are ages 18 and up. So these are all important trials. Dr. Kaplan gave me mentioned the fact that I talked about a cocktail, but I'm pretty sure that I stole that line from him, that it's going to take a cocktail to treat this disease, very likely for people. And so that's why we want to make sure that all of these drugs get tested, that they all get across the finish line. And some, if you go to our website, you'll see that there's some drugs that were started. Daiichi Sankyo had a drug that they stopped. BioCryst had a drug that they stopped. So not everything is going to progress, but that's the nature of how this works, and that's how we know what treatments are safe and effective for this disease. So we do hope that if you have questions, you can always email us at together@ifopa.org. We're glad to answer questions for you, but the most important thing for you to do is, if you are interested in a clinical trial, is to contact your FOP doctor and have a conversation with them. Don't look at clinicaltrials.gov and make assumptions about, well, I don't think I'm eligible. Contact your physician or contact the trial sites that are located on our website and have a conversation with the doctor about it, and they will help guide you through that decision.
Michelle, I did just get a question. Someone asked if it was possible that we could learn of an outcome before August 16th, but that's not it. The FDA doesn't release their decision until then. Is that right?
It is the date. It is the deadline by which they have to make a decision. So it could potentially come earlier, but I would say it's probably unlikely that it's going to come earlier than August 16th. I think the other thing that is just important, this is kind of a word of just level setting of expectations, is that if the drug is approved in the United States, then there will be work with payers. So you're going to hear us probably start pulling out some of our old glossary terms again, but we'll talk about payers. Payers are insurance companies, private insurance companies. It's Medicare, it's Medicaid in the United States. Some people that are on government military insurance have something called TRICARE. And so payers have to make decisions about how and if they're going to cover a drug. And so that's, if a drug gets approved, then that's the next hurdle, is what we call access. And that means whether or not through payers that patients are going to be able to get access to the drug. So you may remember it was mentioned today by Dr. Friedman that palovarotene was approved. It was approved in January of 2020. I'm trying to remember now, Hope, you'll have to forgive me. I think it's 2022, January of 2022. Yes, yeah. 22 in Canada. But so far, no patient has been dosed with the drug because they have national health care, and the national health care system has to go province by province, which is like a state for us, and decide if they're going to pay for it. So we've heard that in Canada, it takes about 3 years after a drug is approved for patients to finally have access to it. It is typically not that long in the United States, but we'll just have to wait and see. So I think, those are, the IFOPA is working on some webinars and some podcasts that will offer for families to learn more about access. We've got some peers in the Rare Bone Disease Alliance that we're part of that have approved drugs that will be able to speak with us and to speak with you and share more about how this process works. So, but if you have questions as it's coming out, let us know. And I see the Rodriguezes have joined us.
Yes,
There's
hello.
Dallas, hello.
Hey, hi, Dal. Dallas is here.
That's great.
And good job, Michelle Davis. We appreciated your talk. It was very articulate and very nice. Good job.
Oh, thanks. It was an important day for everybody.
Yeah, it's very important. We've been tuned in all day.
That's great.
Even this little guy. And there's
I
Jack.
love it.
Hi. Thank you guys so much for everything you're doing.
You are welcome.
Oh, don't do that. Oh, you're going to get me going.
I'm sorry, we didn't mean to log in and make it a sad moment. We should be happy.
No, it's just, it is truly an honor to work with this community and to be with you through tough times. We've lost several people this last year, but to be with you through these celebratory times as well. And to know that you made a difference, your participation in these trials and the work of our principal investigators and study coordinators who work on these trials, and to Ipsen, it all made a difference. So.
Well, Dallas is obviously too young, but anything that everyone's making help do to help pave the way for the future, we're in it. We're in it to win it like everybody else now at this point. So, yeah, not going anywhere.
If Dallas can just keep bringing the cuteness factor, I would greatly appreciate that, because he's a great.
He was just waving a minute ago. It's kind of weird. He hasn't waved at anybody in forever, but he's waving now, so that was neat.
That's great.
Michelle, we did have.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, Joe. We did have another question come in about the iPledge program that was mentioned by Suzanne Rabati. And so, do you know, or would you be able to share a little bit about if the drug was to be approved? She suggested that it would be approved upon the condition of it being part of the iPledge program.
Yep. So whenever there is an adverse event or a side effect in a trial, they will often, the drug companies have to say, what are you going to do to monitor the risks? And they have to set up what's called a risk evaluation and mitigation strategy. So you heard Ipsen talking about that today, that they're going to put together, they're going to have a registry that follows patients that are taking the drug for 10 years, and they'll monitor patients in that. So the pledge is a program of the FDA that is a risk evaluation and mitigation strategy program. So we will be learning more about it in the coming days. It is definitely something that we'll see. It's ultimately probably the decision of the FDA and Ipsen whether or not they can do it. So not necessarily that was something we have input on, but we are monitoring that. But it is a program of the FDA.
I was just going to say something very briefly, if that's okay.
Of course.
Well done to everyone who spoke or spoke on behalf of others. You all did a fantastic job. Very pleasantly surprised by just how much sway the patient perspective and the caregiver's perspective overrode the concerns of the data and the analysis in question. That was really fantastic to see. And of course, it's a little bit bittersweet for those of us outside the US, especially in Europe. So let's crack on and get a few more of those treatments pushed on through so we can all be celebrating at the same time.
I think this is also going to be an interesting lesson. We work a lot at the IFOPA with members of the Rare Bone Disease Alliance and the National Health Council and the National Organization of Rare Disorders. And I think to your point, Chris, is that, that today the FDA said that patient needs were really important. And they talked about the window, that there's a small window to treat these patients, and they wanted to be able to pay attention to that. This was something that I think is very critical. They said small differences, like even a small limit of progression makes a big difference to people with FOP. And if you've heard anything about some of the other drugs that have been approved for other diseases, there's been controversy before in muscular dystrophy because patients said that a patient, something that's important to them, the FDA thought wasn't important. And then the muscular dystrophy community fought that. And so maybe today we're seeing the benefits of that the FDA is paying more attention to, that little differences for patients matter. So I think it's a win for us today, but I think it's also a win for the rare disease community. Anyone else? Well, like I said, you can always reach us at together@ifopa.org. Send us a message that way, and we're glad to get back to you with questions. If you have questions about the registry, or you said, hey, I'm trying to figure out where that trial page is that you mentioned, Michelle, just shoot us an email and we'll send you links to follow all of that information. We are planning, it will probably be, I would say late July. We're planning a webinar on the clinical trials that are available. So be watching for that. We're in a really unique position in the FOP community right now. I was talking with Dr. Michael Collins, who's at the NIH, and I was explaining to him that we live in a world where there are 6 clinical trials for families with FOP right now today, and that there are 900 to 1,000 known patients living with this condition. And to fill those trials, we need about 300 people, which is about a third of the known patient population. And so that means to be able to get answers on these drugs as to whether they are both safe and effective, we are really going to need people to consider, is there a trial that they can participate in? We know for some people that will not work, but we do hope that everyone will consider it so that we can make sure we get these trials filled. So, Megan, you're our board chair. Is there anything else you want to say as we wrap up today?
Thanks, Michelle. Just thank you to everyone. Thank you to the staff for all of your hard work. You guys, behind the scenes, there is so much work they do, and they're tirelessly our champions, quite frankly. Thank you to Fred for discovering the gene.
Yes,
those many years ago. And thanks to all of you for your resilience and support for the IFOPA. We wouldn't be where we are today without all of you guys. So thank you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you.
Well, you know where to find us. To our friends in the Netherlands and France and the UK, good night. I know you're headed to bed. I'm not sure what time it is in the Philippines, but we're glad to have you joining us, Magdi. And everyone, have a great evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.
Thanks, Michelle.
Take care, Fro.
Megan, good night.